Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
We decided to celebrate our wedding anniversary at an upscale restaurant. After I returned from the restroom, where I had taken care of some urgent business, a woman approached me and said, "Don't drink from your glass. Your husband poured something from a strange vial into it." I thanked her for the warning and decided to quietly switch my glass with my husband's. But 20 minutes later, I had always believed that my marriage to Fernando was perfect. We met 5 years ago at an economic forum when both of us were just starting our paths in business. At the time, Fernando was working with dropshipping on Shopify, and I was looking for a new direction for growth. We clicked right away. I remember how, after a dull lecture on marketing strategies, he came up to me with a cup of coffee and said, "You were taking notes so intently, there was more understanding in your eyes than in the speaker's entire presentation." Those words won me over with their sincerity, and our conversation stretched on for hours. We discussed business ideas, shared experiences, and by the end of the day, we had decided to launch a new project together. 6 months later, Fernando proposed to me. We always celebrated our wedding anniversary in style. This time, Fernando had booked a table at one of the city's most expensive restaurants. Everything seemed perfect. Fernando was particularly charming and attentive, showering me with compliments and admiring my new dress. During dinner, he offered a toast to our 5th year together and the prosperity of our shared business. We drank champagne, and I felt a warmth inside from his words and from the thought of everything we had built together. I looked into his eyes, trying to see the reflection of my love, and I truly believed we were made for each other. About an hour into dinner, I excused myself to go to the restroom. I remember looking in the mirror as I fixed my makeup, thinking how lucky I was to have such a caring and devoted husband. My thoughts were interrupted by a strange woman who seemed to appear out of nowhere behind me. She was elegantly dressed, about my age, but something in her eyes made me uneasy. "Sorry to bother you," she began in a quiet voice. "I know this will sound strange, but I have to warn you, don't drink from your glass. Your husband poured something into it from a strange little bottle when you stepped away." I felt the ground disappear beneath me. My first instinct was to be outraged, to dismiss her like some lunatic, but something in her face, in her eyes, stopped me. There was no malice, no desire to stir up trouble, only genuine concern. "Who are you? Why should I believe you?" I asked, trying to speak calmly, though my heart was pounding out of my chest. "My name is Elena." "I know your husband better than you think," she replied, with a hint of bitterness in her voice. "I don't have time to explain, but if you value your life, don't drink from your glass. And please, don't let him know I spoke to you." Without waiting for a response, she quickly left the restroom, leaving me in complete turmoil. I stared at my reflection, trying to make sense of what I had just heard. Fernando, my Fernando, whom I had lived with for 5 years, who had always been so gentle and loving, could he really have slipped something into my drink? It seemed absurd. But what if she was telling the truth? What if my life was truly in danger? I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself. "I need to think rationally," I told myself. "If Fernando really put something in my glass, I can test it, just switch our glasses. If nothing happens, then Elena was lying, and I'll forget this whole thing." With that thought, I returned to the dining room. Fernando greeted me with a smile, but I thought I saw something flicker in his eyes. Tension? Anticipation? I couldn't say for sure, but suddenly, I started noticing details I had missed before. Our table was in the corner of the room, private, ideal for a romantic dinner or something more sinister. My glass was exactly where I had left it, filled with dark ruby-colored wine. Fernando had the same wine, but his glass was about a third full. I sat down and resumed the conversation as if nothing had happened, but my mind was racing, looking for a way to switch the glasses unnoticed. "You know, I think we should talk about expanding the business," Fernando began, and I noticed his eyes kept darting to my glass. "I've got a few ideas that could really take us to the next level." "That sounds exciting," I replied with a smile. "What kind of ideas?" While he talked about potential investors and new markets, I subtly moved my handbag so that it slid off the table. As expected, Fernando bent down to pick it up. In that moment, I quickly swapped our glasses. "Thank you, darling," I said, taking the bag from his hands. "To new horizons." I raised the glass and now his for a toast. Fernando hesitated slightly, then smiled and raised what had been my glass. "To us," he said, and we drank. I took a small sip, watching him closely. Fernando drank nearly half the glass. If Elena was telling the truth, then the poison was now in his body. The thought made me feel sick, but I forced myself to remain composed. The next 20 minutes passed in a haze. We chatted about trivial things, about future plans, but I noticed Fernando growing increasingly uneasy. His forehead glistened with sweat, and his hands began to tremble slightly. "Are you feeling all right?" I asked with genuine concern. Despite everything, he was still my husband, and the thought that he might be suffering tore at my heart. "Yeah, just a bit warm in here," he replied, loosening his tie. "Maybe I should get some fresh air." I nodded, and he rose from the table. But he hadn't taken more than a few steps when he stumbled badly. I barely managed to catch him before he collapsed. "Fernando, what's wrong?" I cried, supporting him. I don't know. I feel strange." His voice was weak, his gaze unfocused. Then a terrifying realization hit me. Whatever was in that glass really was poison, and my husband really did intend to kill me on our wedding anniversary. I looked into the eyes of the man I thought I knew better than myself and saw fear. But not just fear of physical collapse, fear of being found out, the fear of a man whose dark plan had just backfired. "We need to call an ambulance," I said, my voice devoid of fear or anger, only filled with determination to uncover the truth, no matter how terrible. Fernando lost consciousness right there in the restaurant. His condition was rapidly deteriorating. People began to panic. Someone called for an ambulance. The restaurant manager rushed over with a first aid kit. Everything was happening so quickly I didn't have time to process the horror of the situation. I answered questions mechanically, gave instructions to the staff, held Fernando's hand and checked his pulse. Outwardly I was composed and efficient. Inside, a storm of emotions was raging. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. The medics quickly assessed Fernando's condition, hooked him up to some machines, and started administering drugs. I watched his pale face, unable to believe this was real. One of the medics asked me if Fernando had taken any medications, had any allergies, or had complained about feeling unwell before losing consciousness. "No," I replied. "We were celebrating our anniversary. He had some wine, and suddenly he didn't feel well." I almost told the truth, almost confessed that I had switched our glasses after a warning from a stranger. But something stopped me, instinct, intuition, I don't know. I stayed silent. Fernando was placed on a stretcher and taken to the ambulance. I followed them, still unable to believe what was happening. Inside the vehicle, the medic kept asking me questions, and I answered like a robot. My mind was trying to make sense of it all, to find an explanation that didn't involve my husband trying to poison me. Maybe Elena was mistaken, maybe she was the one who had tampered with our drinks, or maybe it was all just a terrible misunderstanding. I clung to any hope that could absolve Fernando, preserve my faith in our marriage and our love. But deep down, I already knew the truth, and it was too horrifying to accept all at once. At the hospital, Fernando was taken straight to intensive care. I was asked to wait in the corridor and fill out some paperwork. I sat on a plastic chair, mechanically writing down information on the forms, my mind in chaos. About an hour later, a doctor came out to speak with me. His expression was serious. "Your husband is stable now, but his condition is critical," he said. "He shows clear signs of poisoning. We've taken blood samples to identify the exact substance. Do you know what he might have taken?" I shook my head. "We were at a restaurant. We only had wine." The doctor looked at me intently. "His blood contains traces of a powerful substance. This doesn't look like accidental food or alcohol poisoning. Are you sure you don't know anything that might help us?" I shook my head again, but this time I was torn. On one hand, I wanted to help the doctors save Fernando's life. On the other, I still couldn't bring myself to speak the terrifying truth. "Can I see him?" I asked. "Not right now, he's unconscious, and we're performing procedures. But as soon as his condition fully stabilizes, you'll be allowed a short visit." I nodded and sank back into my chair. The doctor was about to leave, but suddenly stopped and looked at me with a new expression, a mixture of professional concern and human compassion. "Senora Morales, in such cases we are required to notify the police," he said quietly. "It's standard procedure when poisoning with an unknown substance is suspected." A chill ran down my spine. Police, an investigation, questions I had no answers to, or rather, answers I was afraid to say out loud. "I understand," I replied, trying to keep my voice calm. "Do whatever needs to be done." The doctor nodded and walked away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I took out my phone and saw several missed calls from an unknown number. My intuition told me it was Elena, the woman from the restaurant, trying to contact me, but I wasn't ready to talk to her. Not now, when my whole life was crumbling before my eyes. Instead, I opened the photo gallery on my phone and started scrolling through pictures from my years with Fernando. Here we were in Bali, sunbathing on the beach. Here celebrating a big business deal. Here, last anniversary, I'm blowing out candles on a cake while Fernando looks at me with such tenderness. Or was it only my perception of tenderness? I searched the photos for answers, trying to see the moment when everything went wrong, when my loving husband became someone capable of cold-bloodedly planning my murder. The phone vibrated again, the same unknown number. This time, I decided to answer. "Hello," I said, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "Barbara, it's Elena. I need to talk to you." "Not over the phone. It's about your husband and what happened today." I hesitated. Should I trust a stranger who might have just saved my life, or rely on my own instincts and keep everything to myself until I figured things out? In the end, curiosity and the thirst for truth won. "All right," I said. "Where and when?" "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., Café La Leyenda. Come alone, and be careful. What happened today, it's just the beginning." She hung up without waiting for my reply. I sat in the hospital hallway, clutching the phone, feeling like reality was slipping away from me. What exactly did this woman know? How was she connected to Fernando? And most importantly, what did she mean by just the beginning? Minutes turned into hours. I remained in the hospital corridor, deep in thought, trying to piece together the fragments of my shattered reality. A nurse came out periodically to update me on Fernando's condition. "Stable, but critical," she said. "The doctors are doing everything they can." Around midnight, 2 men in plain clothes approached me. They identified themselves as police officers and asked me to come with them to the station to give a statement about the incident at the restaurant. I didn't object. Maybe it was for the best. At the hospital, I felt trapped, alone with my thoughts and fears. At the police station, they led me to a small interrogation room. The setting was modest, a table, a few chairs, and a mirror on the wall, which I suspected was one way. One of the detectives, who introduced himself as David Sanchez, began with standard questions. How long had Fernando and I been married, whether we had any conflicts, how the dinner had gone before the incident. I answered honestly but didn't mention Elena's warning or the fact that I had switched the glasses. Part of me still couldn't believe what was happening, and another part feared that if I told the truth, I would become the suspect. "Senora Morales," the detective said after a series of questions. "The doctors have informed us that your husband's body contains traces of a powerful substance that may have been used to poison him. Do you have any idea where that substance could have come from?" I felt everything tighten inside me, the moment of truth. Should I tell them about Elena and the glass switch, or continue pretending I knew nothing? "No," I said finally. "We were just having dinner." Everything seemed normal, and then he suddenly felt unwell. The detective nodded, jotting something down in his notebook. "Your husband is in business, correct?" "What kind?" "Yes, we run a business together, dropshipping through the Shopify platform." We've been doing it for several years. Has your husband had any conflicts with partners or competitors? Anyone who might have threatened him? I thought about it. Over the 5 years we'd been in business, there had been various situations, but nothing serious enough to warrant poisoning. No, nothing like that. Just standard business disagreements, no threats, no open hostility. The detective kept writing, and I found myself thinking how surreal this all felt. Just that morning I was a happy wife getting ready to celebrate our anniversary, and now I was in a police station answering questions about my husband's possible poisoning. Senora Morales, the detective leaned toward me, his voice quieter. I have to ask you directly, did you have any reason to want your husband dead? What? I was so shocked my voice cracked. Of course not. We love each other. We have a wonderful relationship. But even as I said it, I could feel the hollowness of the words. If our relationship was so wonderful, why had Fernando tried to poison me? What had happened to our love, to our marriage? The detective was closely watching my reaction. Just standard procedure, he said. We have to explore all possible angles, including the possibility that the poison was meant for you, but for some reason, your husband ended up ingesting it. I felt the blood drain from my face. They were already suspecting something, either based on toxicology reports or perhaps from speaking with restaurant staff. That's absurd, I said, trying to sound firm. Why would Fernando try to poison me? That's exactly what we're trying to determine, Senora Morales, the detective replied. Your husband has a large life insurance policy in the event of your death. My heart skipped a beat. The insurance? I remembered how, just a few months ago, Fernando insisted we both take out large policies. It's a reasonable precaution for people in our position, he had said. We need to make sure that, in case of anything unforeseen, the other isn't left without support. Yes, I answered quietly. We both have insurance. The detective nodded again, continuing to take notes. We'll verify that information. For now, you're free to go, Senora Morales. But please don't leave town and remain available for further questions. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief that the interrogation was over. Can I go back to the hospital to see my husband? Of course. We have no grounds to detain you. But keep in mind, the investigation is just beginning. We'll be looking closely into all aspects of this incident. I left the police station with a heavy heart. It was late evening now, and a light rain was falling. I hailed a taxi and asked to be taken back to the hospital. On the way, I checked my phone again. No new calls, no messages from the number Elena had called from, only a few missed calls from colleagues and friends who had probably already heard the news. At the hospital, they told me Fernando had regained consciousness but was still very weak. I was allowed a short visit. I stood outside his room, gathering my strength. What could I say to a man who had likely tried to kill me? How could I look him in the eye? Taking a deep breath, I entered the room. Fernando lay in the hospital bed, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. Machines were monitoring his condition. As I walked in, he slowly turned his head toward me. Barbara, he whispered. What happened? I stepped closer, trying to keep calm. You don't remember? We were at the restaurant, celebrating our anniversary, and then you suddenly got sick. His eyes were glassy, his gaze unfocused. I remember the restaurant, the toasts, and then nothing. He seemed genuinely confused. But was it real or an act? I didn't know what to believe anymore, or who. My husband, the man I had shared a bed with, built a business and a future with, was now a stranger. The doctor said they found something in your blood, I said carefully, watching his reaction. They think you were poisoned. His eyes widened. Poisoned? But who? How? I was hoping you could tell me, I replied, and for the first time, bitterness crept into my voice. Fernando, what's going on? Is there something I need to know? He closed his eyes, as if in pain. I don't know. My head is spinning. I can't think clearly. I couldn't be sure if that was true or if he was just avoiding my questions, but in his condition, I knew I couldn't push him too hard. "Get some rest," I said. "We'll talk when you're feeling better." I was about to leave when he suddenly grabbed my hand. His grip was weak but desperate. "Barbara, be careful," he whispered. "They might come for you now." "Who?" "Fernando, who might come for me?" But his eyes had already closed, and his hand dropped limply. Whether he'd lost consciousness again or simply fallen asleep, I couldn't tell. I left the room with even more questions than before. Who were they? Who was Fernando afraid of? And how was all this connected to the attempted poisoning at the restaurant? The nurse told me that Fernando would remain in the hospital for at least a few days. I was advised to go home, get some rest, and return in the morning once he was more stable. I took a taxi back to our apartment, mentally preparing for a sleepless night full of anxiety and uncertainty. But when I stepped into the empty apartment, a wave of deep loneliness washed over me. For all these years, I had been living beside someone I never truly knew. That realization hurt more than the attempted murder itself. I didn't turn on the main lights, just the small hallway lamp. I dropped my purse on the couch and headed toward the bedroom. But as I reached the door, a sudden thought stopped me cold. If Fernando had planned to poison me, maybe there's evidence in this apartment, proof of his criminal intentions. I began searching the apartment methodically, starting with his desk. I sifted through papers, checked drawers, looking for anything suspicious. And there, in the bottom drawer, under a stack of documents, I found a small, unlabeled vial. My heart raced. This could be the same vial from which Fernando had poured the poison into my glass. I didn't open it, I just placed it in a plastic bag, planning to hand it over to the police. Continuing the search, I checked his computer, but it was password protected. That struck me as odd, since we used to have no secrets from each other. We always shared passwords. In the bedroom, checking the pockets of his jackets, I found a business card with the name Elena Navarro and a phone number, the same number that had called me. On the back of the card, written by hand, were the chilling words, "Plan B is ready. Tomorrow it all ends." The discovery was shocking. So Elena and Fernando knew each other. They might even have been working together. But then why had she warned me? Something didn't add up. The puzzle was incomplete. I sat on the bed, trying to piece everything together. Fernando had planned to poison me. Elena, who clearly knew about this plan, had warned me. I had switched the glasses, and Fernando ended up drinking the poisoned wine himself. Now he was in the hospital, and I was left trying to answer questions I should never have had to ask. My eyes fell on a framed photo on the nightstand, the two of us laughing, holding each other, looking so happy. How had everything gone so wrong? When had our love turned into this nightmare of lies and betrayal? I picked up my phone and dialed Elena's number. After a few rings, she answered. "I found your business card," I said without any preamble. "You knew my husband? Were you in on it with him?" There was a brief pause on the other end. "Not over the phone," she replied. "Meet me tomorrow, as we agreed. I'll answer all your questions. But please, be careful. Don't trust anyone." She hung up, leaving me even more confused. I felt like a character in a spy thriller, no one to trust, every word a potential trap. I took a shower, trying to wash away the horror of the day, but the sense of betrayal clung to me like a second skin. It was in my mind, in my soul. Lying in bed, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts swirled like autumn leaves in the wind. Fernando, our marriage, our business, his words at the hospital, the mysterious Elena, the business card with that ominous note. It was all forming a picture I didn't want to see, one I couldn't bear to believe. By dawn, as the sky began to lighten outside the window, I made a decision. I had to find out the truth, no matter how terrifying. I had to know why the man who once swore to love me until death had tried to bring death closer. "You changed everything yesterday," said Elena when we met at Café La Leyenda the next morning. I had chosen a table in the corner, far from the windows and other patrons. Elena arrived exactly on time. She was dressed simply but tastefully, and looked tired and tense. What exactly did I change? I asked, trying to understand who I was dealing with. A friend? An enemy? An accomplice? A victim? Elena took a sip of her coffee before answering. Your husband's plan was supposed to work perfectly. You drink the poison wine, die a few hours later from what seems like natural causes, exacerbated by alcohol and food. The next day, Fernando collects a $2 million insurance payout and disappears. How do you know all this? I tried to speak calmly, though my hands were trembling beneath the table. Because I was supposed to be his alibi, Elena said, looking me straight in the eye. I was supposed to confirm that he was with me at the time of your death. I felt the ground drop out from under me. It was one thing to suspect that your husband wanted to kill you, and quite another to hear it confirmed by his accomplice. Were you his lover? The question burst out before I could stop myself. Elena smiled faintly, but there was no amusement in it. No. I didn't sleep with your husband, if that's what you're worried about. Our relationship was professional. I'm a specialist in insurance law. Fernando came to me months ago for advice on collecting a life insurance payout in the event of a spouse's death. At first, I thought it was a routine consultation, but then I realized he was planning a murder. And you agreed to help him? I couldn't hide the shock and disgust in my voice. No, of course not. Elena looked offended. Once I realized what he was planning, I wanted to go to the police, but I had no evidence, only suspicions. Fernando never spoke about murder directly, he was very careful with his wording. I decided to keep an eye on him, to gather proof. And yesterday, when I saw you with him at the restaurant, I realized it was the day he had mentioned. I remembered the business card I had found among Fernando's things. What does Plan B is ready mean? What plan? I asked. Elena sighed. Plan B was in case the poisoning failed. I don't know the details, but Fernando hinted at some kind of accident that was supposed to happen to you in the coming days. Maybe a car crash, or something similar. My head spun. Fernando hadn't just wanted to kill me, he had a backup plan if the first attempt failed. But why? I asked, my voice breaking. We were happy. We had a successful business. We loved each other, at least, I loved him. Elena pulled a folder from her bag and laid it on the table. That's why. Your business is on the verge of bankruptcy. Fernando made a series of risky deals that didn't work out. He's in debt, deep debt, to very dangerous people. People who don't forgive. I opened the folder and saw copies of financial statements, bank records, and loan agreements. Everything looked genuine, and all of it pointed to the fact that our business was in a catastrophic state. How did you get these documents? I asked as I flipped through the pages. I have connections in the financial world. When I began to suspect Fernando, I conducted my own investigation. And you decided to save me, a stranger, instead of helping Fernando get the money and pay off his debts? Elena looked at me, surprised. Would you have preferred I let him kill you? No, of course not. I'm just trying to understand your motivation. It's simple, I didn't want to be an accomplice to murder. And yes, I didn't want an innocent person to die because of a man's financial desperation. I kept studying the documents, trying to process the information. If all of it was true, then my world hadn't just turned upside down, it had completely collapsed. What should I do now? I asked, looking up at Elena. Go to the police, she answered without hesitation. Tell them everything. Hand over the documents and the vial you found. Let them investigate. Let Fernando answer for what he tried to do. The thought of officially accusing my husband of attempted murder was almost unbearable. Despite everything I had learned, part of me still loved him, still remembered the happy moments we'd shared. What if I don't want him to go to prison? I asked quietly. What if I just want to leave him, get a divorce, and start a new life? Elena studied me carefully. You can try. But the people he owes money to won't just disappear. If they realize the only way Fernando can pay them back is through your death, they might take matters into their own hands. A chill ran through me. You think they might try to kill me? I don't know for sure. But the risk is real. That's why the best thing you can do is go to the police, get protection, and help put Fernando behind bars. That will buy you time to figure out the rest. I sighed, feeling the weight of the decision settling over me. I need to think. This is all too much right now. Elena nodded with understanding. Of course. But don't wait too long. The longer you hesitate, the more you're at risk. And one more thing, stay away from your apartment. Find a safe place and stay there until this is resolved. We exchanged contact information, and Elena promised to stay in touch. After she left, I sat in the cafe, going through the documents again, trying to make sense of it all. My life had become a nightmare. The person I trusted most had committed the ultimate betrayal. Our business, which I thought was thriving, was actually on the brink of collapse. And now, my life might be in danger, not just from my husband, but from faceless creditors as well. I had to make a choice, and it could cost me everything. After the meeting with Elena, I felt like I was in a fog. Reality felt unstable, untrustworthy. I didn't go back to the hospital to see Fernando. I wasn't ready to face him, to speak to him, to pretend everything was normal. Instead, I called my longtime friend Felicia and asked if I could stay with her for a few days. She didn't ask questions, she simply said, "Of course. Come over." I arrived at Felicia's apartment with just one small bag packed with essentials. I brought the folder from Elena and the unlabeled vial as well. The first thing I asked of Felicia was a favor, to take the vial to a private lab for testing. Felicia was a pharmacist and had contacts in the field. She could get the results faster than if I went through official channels. "I won't ask what's going on until you're ready to tell me," Felicia said, taking the vial. "But if you need help, just say the word." I nodded, deeply grateful that at least one person in my life was still trustworthy. The next 2 days I spent going through the documents Elena had given me, checking the state of our business accounts via online banking. What I discovered confirmed everything Elena had told me. Our company was in catastrophic financial ruin. The accounts were nearly empty. Debts to suppliers and creditors were massive. And the strangest part, I hadn't noticed any of it, because Fernando had always handled the finances, while I dealt with marketing and client relations. How could I have been so blind? I asked myself, scrolling through the past month's transactions, small cash withdrawals, transfers to unfamiliar accounts, the slow draining of our reserves. It had all happened right under my nose, and I had seen nothing, trusting my husband completely. On the third day of my stay at Felicia's, she returned with the results from the vial analysis. Her face was serious as she handed me the envelope containing the report. "It's a powerful poison, Barbara," she said quietly. "Even a small dose can cause severe organ damage, and a higher one is lethal. It doesn't act immediately, it's slow acting, which can make it look like a natural death from a heart attack or stroke." I sat there holding the report, feeling cold fury rise within me. Fernando really had tried to kill me. It wasn't a misunderstanding, it wasn't paranoia, it was reality, confirmed by a laboratory report. "What are you going to do?" Felicia asked, sitting beside me. "I'm going to the police," I answered. My voice didn't even sound like my own, it was as if someone else were speaking through me. "I have no choice. He's dangerous, and if I don't stop him now, he might try again." Felicia nodded in agreement. "I'm coming with you. You shouldn't go through this alone." We gathered all the documents, the lab report, and the vial, and headed to the police station. I asked to speak with Detective David Sanchez, who was handling Fernando's poisoning case. When we were brought into his office, I laid everything out on the table in front of him. "Senora Morales," the detective began, scanning through the documents, "these are serious allegations. You're claiming your husband tried to poison you, but ended up poisoning himself by mistake." "Yes," I said firmly. "A woman I didn't know warned me at the restaurant that my husband had poured something into my glass. When he was distracted, I switched our glasses, and the result is what you already know. He's in the hospital, and I'm standing here. And this woman, Elena Navarro, will she confirm your story? Yes, she's willing to testify. She also gave me documents proving that Fernando had a financial motive to kill me. The detective studied the lab report detailing the contents of the vial. This matches what we found in your husband's blood, same composition, same components. Where did you find this vial? In his desk drawer, hidden under a stack of documents. He nodded and made a few notes. Senora Morales, I must inform you, from this moment on, the case becomes official. We'll be launching a full investigation into an attempted murder. Your husband will be the accused, and you, the victim. That means your private life, finances, and relationship will all be thoroughly examined. Are you prepared for that? I hesitated for a second. Was I ready for my personal life to be laid bare? For everyone to learn about Fernando's betrayal, my own blind trust, and the collapse of our marriage and business? But then I remembered the poison in my glass, and the cold calculation with which Fernando had planned my death. Yes, I said firmly. I'm ready. The detective nodded with approval. Good. We'll begin immediately. First, we need to take official statements from you and Ms. Navarro. Then we'll search your apartment and office, seize computers and phones for analysis, and of course, we'll question your husband as soon as the doctors allow it. I nodded, feeling a strange sense of relief. It was no longer just my battle, now it was an official investigation, led by professionals who could uncover the truth and bring the guilty to justice. There's one more important thing, the detective continued. Given the seriousness of the case, we're recommending temporary protection. If your husband really tried to kill you and has ties to dangerous creditors, you could be in danger. What kind of protection? I asked, suddenly realizing that this wasn't a movie, this was my life, and it could truly be in danger. We can offer you secure housing during the investigation, keep your location confidential, and if necessary, assign protection officers. I looked at Felicia, who had sat quietly by my side the whole time, supporting me without saying a word. Can I stay with Felicia? I feel safe at her place. The detective considered it. It's possible, but we'll need to assess the location for security and implement some precautionary measures. Your friend will also need to follow certain confidentiality protocols. Felicia agreed immediately. I'll do whatever's necessary. Barbara can stay with me as long as she needs to. And so, the official investigation began. Over the next few hours, I gave a detailed statement, recounting everything that had happened at the restaurant, my conversation with Elena, the vial I found, the documents she provided. Elena also came to the police station and confirmed my version of events, adding information about her consultations with Fernando regarding life insurance, and how she had gradually realized he was planning something sinister. By evening, the police had enough evidence to place Fernando under surveillance in the hospital and begin the process of obtaining a search warrant for our apartment and office. We'll contact you as soon as there's news, the detective said as we left. In the meantime, try not to draw attention to yourself, limit social media and credit card use. The best thing you can do now is to vanish from the public eye for a while. I nodded, fully aware that my life was now divided into before and after, and this after required me to be strong, cautious, and ready for a fight that was just beginning. Back at Felicia's, I felt a kind of exhaustion that wasn't physical, it was emotional. Too many shocks, too many revelations in too short a time. Try to get some rest, Felicia said, seeing my condition. I'll be right here if you need to talk. I nodded gratefully and went to the guest room. Lying in the dark, I tried to process everything, to find the moment when it all went wrong, when Fernando decided my death was the solution to his problems. My phone vibrated. It was a call from the hospital. My heart skipped a beat. I almost didn't want to answer, but something made me press the green button. Hello? My voice was tense. Barbara, it's me. Fernando's voice was weak, but carried a strange determination. I know you found out everything. The police were here, they asked questions. I know you'll never forgive me, and I'm not asking you to. I just want to warn you. They know the plan failed. They're going to come for you now, because you're the only way left for me to repay the debt. Who are they, Fernando? I asked, feeling the blood freeze in my veins. The people I owe. Serious people, Barbara. They stop at nothing. I thought I could handle it myself, protect you from the consequences of my mistakes. Protect me by killing me? I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. I know how insane it sounds, but at the time, it felt like the only option. I backed myself into a corner. The debts, they were crushing. They threatened to hurt me. And you. I thought, if you died of natural causes, I'd get the insurance, pay them off, and it would all be over. And what about me, Fernando? Did you ever think about me, about what I would lose in your calculations? Silence. A long one. I can't explain what happened to me, Barbara. I lost my mind through fear, desperation. But now, I just want you to know, they know you're alive. And that the police are investigating. They won't wait for the truth to come out. They'll come after you, to make me pay another way. Who are they, Fernando? I repeated. Give me names, anything, something the police can use to protect me. I can't, his voice trembled. If I talk, they'll kill me. But you have to be careful. Very careful. Don't go home, don't go to the office, don't use our shared accounts. Disappear, for a while, at least. I already have, I said coldly. The police are protecting me. Good. That's good, he paused, then added, Barbara. I know it doesn't matter now, but I really did love you, before it all went wrong, before I started drowning in debt and fear. You were the best thing in my life, and I ruined everything. I didn't answer. His declaration of love felt like mockery now, a final insult after everything he had done. I have to go, I said. Goodbye, Fernando. Goodbye, Barbara. And please be careful. I hung up and sat in the dark for a long time, phone still in hand. The threat was real. Fernando wasn't faking. His warning sounded sincere, and that scared me even more. I left the room and found Felicia in the kitchen, making tea. Fernando called, I said, sinking into a chair. He warned me I'm in danger. Said the people he owes might come after me. Felicia silently placed a cup of tea in front of me and sat across from me. Do you believe him? Yes. I do. He sounded genuinely afraid. And it matches what Elena told me about his debts. Then we need to be extra careful. Tomorrow I'll speak to the building manager about increasing security. And maybe we should ask the police to patrol the area regularly. I nodded, grateful for her support and clear thinking. Thank you, Felicia. I don't know what I'd do without you. That's what friends are for, she said with a gentle smile. Now drink your tea and try to sleep. Tomorrow's a new day, and we keep fighting. I finished my tea and went back to the bedroom, but sleep wouldn't come. My thoughts circled endlessly, Fernando's betrayal, the looming danger, the rapid unraveling of my life. Just days ago, I had been preparing to celebrate our anniversary, full of joy and plans for the future. Now, I was hiding in someone else's apartment, afraid for my life. The only future I could plan now was a court case against my own husband. The next morning brought news from Detective David Sanchez. The police had secured a warrant to search our apartment and office and had begun collecting evidence. They had also placed surveillance at the hospital in case any of Fernando's creditors came looking for him. We found another vial, identical to the one you brought in, the detective told me over the phone. It was hidden inside the air vent in your bedroom. We also found several documents in your husband's office that confirm his financial problems and his connections to some questionable individuals. Do you know who these people are, the ones he owes money to? I asked, remembering Fernando's warning. We have some leads. It looks like your husband had dealings with a local criminal group involved in loan sharking and extortion. We're already pursuing this angle. Are they dangerous? I knew the question sounded naive, but I needed to hear the truth. Yes, they're dangerous, the detective replied bluntly. But we're doing everything we can to ensure your safety. We've dealt with situations like this before. After speaking with the detective, I felt a strange sense of relief. At least now I knew what I was up against. Uncertainty is always more frightening than a concrete threat, something you can confront. Elena called later that same day. She had also given her statement to the police and was now under protection as a key witness. "How are you?" she asked, her voice filled with genuine concern. "Holding on," I replied, still trying to process everything that had happened and figure out what to do next. "Do you have a plan?" Elena had always struck me as someone who valued structure and action. "Not yet. I'm still in the phase of realization. My life has turned to ruins in just a few days, and I'm not sure where to even begin rebuilding." "I understand. But maybe you should start thinking about your business's future. Despite the debts and issues, there might still be value worth salvaging." I hadn't thought about that. The business Fernando and I built together felt like a betrayal in itself. But Elena was right, maybe there was still something left to save from the wreckage of my former life. "You're right," I said. "I should at least evaluate the situation and see if anything can be salvaged." "I can help," Elena offered. "I have experience restructuring troubled companies. If you'd like, we can review the financials together and create a plan." Her offer caught me off guard. Why would this woman, who barely knew me, be so willing to help? I voiced the question aloud. Elena paused before answering. "Because I've been through something similar. Years ago, my husband betrayed me too. He didn't try to kill me, of course, but he destroyed our joint business and left me with the debts. I know how hard it is to start from scratch. I want to help you avoid the mistakes I made." Her sincerity touched me deeply. In a world that had suddenly become dangerous and hostile, finding selfless support felt like a rare and precious gift. "Thank you," I said. "I would really appreciate your help." We agreed to meet in a few days, once the security situation stabilized. Until then, I decided to focus on cooperating with the police and reinforcing my protection. Felicia came home that evening, arms full of groceries and updates. The building manager had agreed to enhance security, and the police promised to patrol the area regularly. "And one more thing," she said, unloading bags on the kitchen table. "I got in touch with my brother. He works in IT security. He's going to set you up with new digital identities so you can use the internet and stay in contact without revealing your location." I was touched by Felicia's thoughtfulness. "You're doing so much for me. And you'd do the same for me if I were in your position," she said simply. "By the way, my brother also said you should think about your finances. If you and Fernando had joint accounts, he might still be able to access them, even from the hospital." It was something I hadn't considered. Most of our accounts were shared, and technically, Fernando could access them through online banking. "You're right," I said, anxiety rising again. "I need to block the accounts or move the money immediately." "Let's do it now," Felicia said, pulling out her laptop. "My brother said you should use a VPN to hide your IP address so no one can trace where you're logging in from." We spent the next hour shutting down the old accounts and opening new ones in my name at a different bank. I transferred the remaining funds, not much, but enough to get by for now. "Have you thought about divorce?" Felicia asked once we finished. "Yes," I replied. "But the detective said it's not the right time to file. Better to wait until the investigation and trial for attempted murder are over." Felicia nodded. "That makes sense. Still, you should probably talk to a family lawyer now, just to understand your rights and prepare." Another practical suggestion I couldn't ignore. "I'll try to find a good lawyer," I agreed. We had dinner together, trying to avoid talking about my problems and instead chatted about more neutral things, movies, books, fashion news. It felt almost normal, almost like before, when we were just friends catching up over dinner. Afterward, I returned to my room and, for the first time in days, felt something resembling peace. I knew the danger wasn't over, that my life was still in shambles, but now I had a plan, people willing to help, and the determination to fight. Then the phone rang, cutting through my thoughts. An unknown number. Hello? I answered cautiously. Barbara Morales? A man's voice, low with a slight accent. My name is David Ortiz. I'm a lawyer representing some of your husband's business partners. We'd like to discuss the matter of settling his debts. A chill ran down my spine. It had begun. Fernando's creditors were contacting me directly. I have nothing to do with my husband's debts, I said, trying to sound confident. You'll have to take it up with him. Unfortunately, your husband is currently unavailable. And the matter is urgent. My clients are prepared to offer you a mutually beneficial solution. Let's meet tomorrow at 12 o'clock at Cafe Europa. Come alone, and don't involve the police. And if I refuse? I asked, already knowing the answer. Then my clients will be forced to seek other means of collecting what they're owed. Means that may be less comfortable for you and those close to you. The threat was clear. They weren't just threatening me, they were threatening everyone I cared about. I'll think about it, I said, avoiding any definitive answer. Think fast, Senora Morales. Time is not on your side. The call ended, and I sat there with the phone in my hand, panic rising. Fernando had been right, they were coming for me, and they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. I went to the living room where Felicia was reading. I told her about the call. We need to report this to the police immediately, she said firmly. That's a direct threat. They can start tracking the calls and identify these people. I agreed and called Detective David Sanchez, who had given me his personal number for emergencies. He listened carefully. This is important information, he said. Now we have proof of a direct threat. Don't worry, we'll increase your protection and begin tracking this lawyer. But I need your promise, Senora Morales, under no circumstances are you to go to that meeting. It's a trap, and we can't guarantee your safety there. I wasn't planning to go, I assured him. But what if they call again? Keep them talking. Stall. Pretend you're considering their offer. The more information we gather, the better. And we may need to move you to a more secure location temporarily. I hung up, feeling the weight of new responsibility. I was no longer just a victim, I was now an active participant in an operation to catch dangerous criminals. My actions could determine not only my own safety, but the outcome of the entire investigation. What did he say? Felicia asked. He said to stall them and absolutely not go to the meeting. He also said I might need to relocate to a safer place. Felicia nodded. That's smart. My apartment isn't a fortress, and if these people are as dangerous as they seem, it wouldn't be hard for them to get in. We stayed up late, discussing possible scenarios and next steps. Felicia was calm and practical. It helped me stay focused in this surreal situation. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I went to bed. But even in sleep, I was haunted by nightmares, betrayal, pursuit, and no way out. I woke several times, checking the locks and listening to every sound. Morning brought new concerns. The detective called early to tell me they had traced the call and identified the caller. It was a lawyer, but one with a shady reputation and known ties to organized crime. We're continuing surveillance, the detective said. In the meantime, I'm sending an officer to your building for additional protection. He'll be stationed at the entrance. I gratefully agreed, feeling the protective circle tightening around me, but unsure whether it would be enough against people who would stop at nothing for money. The day passed in tense anticipation. Elena messaged to say she had found discrepancies in the company's financial documents that might point to Fernando misusing funds. It looks like he wasn't just paying off debts, she wrote. He might have been funneling money elsewhere. It was another mystery, another twist in an already tangled web. Where else had Fernando been sending money? What else had he been hiding? How deep did this rabbit hole of lies and betrayal go? At 12 o'clock, The time of the supposed meeting at Cafe Europa, which I had, of course, ignored. The phone rang again. Same number. You didn't come, Senora Morales, said the lawyer, his voice calm but with a clear edge. My clients are disappointed. I couldn't make it, I replied, stalling as the detective had advised. I still don't understand exactly what your clients want. $2 million. That's what your husband owes, including interest. They want it within 48 hours. I don't have that kind of money, I said, and it was true. But there's a life insurance policy in your name. One that would pay exactly that amount in the event of your death. Your husband was ready to resolve this matter a certain way. Now that his plan failed, you'll have to find another solution. I felt sick. They knew about the poisoning plan. They knew about the policy. Maybe they had even pushed him toward it. I can't cash out a life insurance policy while I'm alive, I said, continuing the conversation, aware that the police were probably monitoring the call. There are other options. You can take out a loan using your property or business as collateral. Or liquidate assets. My clients don't care where the money comes from, only that it comes. I need time, I said, trying to sound steady despite the fear tightening inside me. That's a large sum. I can't produce it in 48 hours. You have 36 now, he replied coldly. And to show you how serious we are, check the photo I just sent you. A moment later, a message appeared on my phone. It was a photo of Felicia leaving the pharmacy where she worked, taken that very morning, judging by her clothes. My blood froze. They were watching her. They knew where she worked. They probably knew I was staying in her apartment. Don't hurt my friends, I said, my voice trembling. They have nothing to do with this. That depends entirely on you, Senora Morales. 36 hours. I'll call again at the same time tomorrow to hear about your progress. He hung up, and I sat frozen, clutching the phone in my hand, feeling waves of panic crash over me. They knew about Felicia. They could reach her at any moment. And 36 hours was impossibly short to come up with $2 million, money I simply didn't have. I contacted the detective immediately and told him about the call and the photo of Felicia. This is a serious escalation, he said, his voice more alarmed than before. We're sending an officer to your friend immediately and will arrange for her to be escorted home. As for you, we can't take any more chances. We need to relocate you to a secure location right away. What about Felicia? They know about her. They could come after her even after I'm gone. We'll provide protection for her too. But right now, our priority is getting you out of sight while we gather enough evidence for arrests. Within an hour, 2 plainclothes officers arrived for me. They helped me pack a few essentials and led me to an unmarked car parked in the alley behind the building. Where are we going? I asked once the car began moving. To a safe house outside the city, one of the officers replied. You'll be under constant protection, and no one will be able to find you there. We drove for about 2 hours, first through city streets, making random turns and checking for tails, then onto the highway, and eventually along rural backroads. Finally, the car turned onto a forest path and stopped near a small wooden house nestled among the trees. This is it, the officer said. They're expecting you inside. The house was modest but cozy, 2 bedrooms, a living room, a small kitchen, everything needed for basic living. In the living room, I was met by a middle-aged woman who introduced herself as Sergeant Elvira. She explained that she would be responsible for my safety, along with 2 other officers posted outside. There's internet and a phone here, Elvira said, but we recommend keeping communication to only the most essential contacts, and always using the VPN we installed. I nodded, feeling strangely detached from everything. The safe house, the guards, the secret transport, it all felt like scenes from a movie, not my real life. But the fear and pain were very real. Detective David Sanchez will stay in touch and update you on the investigation, Elvira continued. For now, try to rest and regain your strength. You've had a difficult day. I settled into one of the bedrooms, unpacking the few belongings I'd brought. Among them was a photo of me and Fernando on our wedding day. I didn't even remember packing it. Perhaps I'd grabbed it absent-mindedly while gathering things at Felicia's. Looking at the photo, I tried to figure out whether that happy moment had ever been real or if it had all been an act from the beginning. When did Fernando decide that my life was worth less than his debts? When did love turn into calculation and manipulation? I remembered Elena's words that Fernando had been moving money not just to pay off debts, but for something else. What could that be? Another woman? A secret life I didn't know about? Or something even darker? That evening, Detective Sanchez called. "I have news, Senora Morales," he said. "We completed a preliminary analysis of the financial documents seized from your husband's office. It appears a significant amount of money was sent to offshore accounts, then transferred back into the country in small amounts through various shell companies." "What does that mean?" I asked, trying to follow the scheme. "It's a classic money laundering operation. But what's strange is that the money didn't stay offshore, where it's hard to trace, it came back. That suggests your husband wasn't just borrowing from criminal elements, he may have been working with them directly. A new revelation. A deeper betrayal. Fernando wasn't just in debt to criminals, he might have been laundering their dirty money." "What about the people threatening me?" I asked. "Do you know anything more?" "We've identified several suspects. It's a local gang involved in extortion, loan sharking, and illegal gambling. They're known for their brutality and always getting what they want. But we're working to build a solid case before making arrests." "And Felicia? Is she safe?" "Yes, we've arranged protection for her as well. She's staying with relatives outside the city, also under guard." That brought me a small measure of comfort. At least Felicia wouldn't suffer because of me. "And Fernando? Is he still in the hospital?" "Yes, but his condition has stabilized. The doctors say he may be discharged in a day or two. At that point, we'll officially charge him with attempted murder." I sighed. The thought of my husband behind bars still hurt, even after everything he'd done. "Get some rest, Senora Morales," the detective said before hanging up. "We're doing everything we can to resolve this as safely and quickly as possible." The night in the safe house was quiet, but restless. I awoke at every sound, every creak of the floorboards. My mind wouldn't shut off, endlessly replaying the events of the past few days, trying to find meaning in the chaos that had become my life. In the morning, I turned to the one thing that had always helped me regain balance: work. I had my laptop, protected by a secure VPN, and I could safely review the financial records of our company, looking for the discrepancies Elena had mentioned. I dove into spreadsheets, bank statements, and reports. The more I examined, the clearer it became our business was indeed in trouble, not due to market conditions or competition, but because of systematic fund siphoning by Fernando. The amounts weren't massive individually, but they were consistent, draining the company like water slipping through fingers. Strangely, the money didn't go directly to criminal creditors. It was routed through a web of accounts and companies, with some of it eventually coming back into the country. But where it went next, and to whom, I couldn't trace without advanced tools or access to banking networks. Around noon, Elena called. "I found something interesting," she said without preamble. "Some of the money your husband funneled out went into real estate, specifically a 3-bedroom apartment in a neighboring city, registered under the name Gabriela Perez. Does that name ring a bell?" Something cold twisted inside me. No. I've never heard of her. I did some digging. Based on her social media, Gabriela is a young woman, around 28, works at a travel company, and she has photos with your husband. They're together at resorts and restaurants. The blow, though expected, still knocked the breath from me. A mistress. Of course. There had to be a mistress. Fernando didn't just want the money, he wanted a new life with another woman. How long have they been together? I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded while I burned inside with pain and fury. Judging by the photos, about a year, maybe a bit more. A year. An entire year Fernando had lived a double life, sleeping with me and with her, smiling at me and at her, making promises to both. And all that time, he was planning to get rid of me, to start over with his young mistress, using the money from my life insurance policy. "I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this," Elena said, her voice full of genuine sympathy. "But I thought you should know the full picture." "You're right," I replied, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Thank you for the information." After the call, I sat by the window, staring out at the forest surrounding the safe house, trying to gather the pieces of my reality. So, Fernando didn't just want to pay off debts. He wanted a fresh start with a new woman. The apartment in the neighboring city was likely just the beginning. After my death, he would have collected the insurance payout, cleared his debts, and started a new life with Gabriella. It explained a lot, but not everything. Why had he gone into debt in the first place? Why had our business collapsed? Was it incompetence, or was it all deliberate? Later in the day, the detective called with an update. "We've arrested the lawyer who threatened you," he reported. "He's giving a statement now. It could lead us to his clients." "That's good news," I said. "And one more thing, Senora Morales, your husband regained consciousness and is demanding a lawyer. He refuses to speak without legal counsel. That's his right, of course, but it's slowing things down." "I understand." "And those people he owes, are they still a threat?" "Unfortunately, yes. We can't arrest them without enough evidence, but we're working on it. For now, the safest place for you is the safe house." That evening, Sergeant Elvira stopped by to check in on me. She was the first person I'd seen face to face all day, and I was grateful for the human contact. "How are you holding up?" she asked, sitting on the edge of the couch. "I don't know," I admitted. "Sometimes it feels like this isn't happening to me, like I'm just watching someone else's drama." Elvira nodded with understanding. "That's a normal trauma response. Detachment, it's how the mind protects itself. Do you deal with cases like this often? Spousal murder attempts?" "More than I'd like," she sighed. "But usually it happens in lower-income families due to domestic disputes. Your case, with the financial schemes, the criminal ties, the planning, it stands out." "Lucky me," I said bitterly. "You're a strong woman, Senora Morales," Elvira said as she stood. "You've survived an attempted murder, betrayal, threats, and you're still standing. That deserves respect." After she left, I returned to the financial records, trying to distract myself from thoughts of Fernando's mistress and his betrayal. Among the many transactions, one pattern stood out. Funds were being routed not just to offshore companies and Gabriella, but to an entity called Phoenix Consulting, with large, regular payments. I searched the company name online. All I found was a dry corporate registry entry, founded 3 years ago, listed as providing consulting services, CEO, Navarro, Elena. I read the name over and over, not believing my eyes. Elena Navarro. The same Elena who warned me in the restaurant. The one who supposedly discovered Fernando's plan by accident. The one helping me investigate our finances. A chill ran down my spine. What if Elena wasn't a savior, but an accomplice? What if she and Fernando had been deceiving me all along, staging an elaborate performance? But why? If she were truly conspiring with Fernando, why would she warn me about the poisoned glass? She could have let the plan succeed. Unless it was part of an even more complex scheme, with a different objective. I picked up the phone and called the detective. "I need you to check into Elena Navarro," I said when the detective answered the phone. "She owns a company called Phoenix Consulting that received large sums from our business. It might be a coincidence, but I have to be sure." "That's interesting information," the detective replied, sounding intrigued. "We'll look into the company and its connection to your husband. If Ms. Navarro was receiving payments from your business, that casts doubt on her role in this whole situation." After the call, I couldn't sit still. I paced the room, mentally replaying everything I knew about Elena, every word, every gesture. Something didn't add up, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. The lawyer was supposed to call at noon, but the phone remained silent. Perhaps his arrest had disrupted communication between the creditors and me, or maybe they were preparing something else, something more dangerous. That evening, the detective called back with news about Elena. We conducted a preliminary check on Ms. Navarro and her company, he said, and found several interesting facts. First, she did indeed receive large sums from your business, officially for consulting services. Second, she has a prior conviction for fraud, about 10 years ago. And third, and perhaps most importantly, she's related to one of the city's known crime bosses. He's her cousin. The information hit me like a blow. Elena, who had seemed like my savior, my only ally in this nightmare, had ties to the criminal underworld and had been paid by our business. That couldn't be a coincidence. What does that mean? I asked, though I was beginning to understand. It means that Ms. Navarro is probably not who she claims to be. We don't yet know exactly what her role in all this is, but we suspect she may have been the link between your husband and the criminal creditors. She may have been the one who connected them. Then why did she warn me at the restaurant? Why help me gather evidence against Fernando? That's what we're trying to find out. She may have had her own agenda, her own reasons. For now, I advise you to cease all contact with Ms. Navarro, don't answer her calls or messages, and don't share any more information with her. I agreed, feeling the last of my trust in people begin to crumble. If even Elena, who had seemed so genuine in her desire to help, might have been part of this conspiracy, who could I trust at all? The next morning, I was awakened by a phone call. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello," I answered cautiously. "Barbara, it's Elena." "Please don't hang up," her voice was anxious. "I know the police told you about me, about my past, my company, my family, but that's not the whole truth. I need to meet with you and explain everything." I said nothing, unsure how to respond. Part of me wanted to hear her out, to understand what was really going on, but the other part screamed that this could be a trap. "Why should I believe you?" I asked finally. "You lied to me from the beginning." "Not from the beginning," she insisted. "I really did want to help you, and I still do. Yes, I didn't tell you everything about myself, my ties to Fernando and to those men he owes, but I had my reasons. And if you give me a chance to explain, I think you'll understand. I can't meet you. The police consider you a suspect. I know, and I'm willing to cooperate with them, to tell them everything I know. But first, I have to talk to you. It's not just about money or debt, it's about your safety." Her words made me pause. "What do you mean?" "Not over the phone, please, Barbara. I know you're at a safe house outside the city. I can come there. Let the police search me, make sure I'm not a threat, but I need to speak with you face to face." I hesitated. Meeting Elena could be dangerous, but it might be the only way to uncover the truth. "I have to speak with the detective first," I said finally. "If he agrees to a monitored meeting, then okay." "Thank you," Elena exhaled, clearly relieved. "I'll wait for your decision." I called the detective and told him about Elena's request. He was skeptical. "This could be a way for her to find out your location," he warned, "or a setup. But you said I'm protected here, right? And you can search her before the meeting to make sure she's not armed." The detective considered this. "You're right, and it may be an opportunity to get more information." "Fine, I'll approve the meeting, but only under full police supervision. We'll record everything, and if she so much as flinches suspiciously, we intervene." And so it was decided. The meeting with Elena would take place that same day, at the safe house. I spent the following hours in nervous anticipation, trying to guess what she would say, what explanation she could offer for her double life. Elena arrived accompanied by 2 police officers. They searched her, confirmed she wasn't carrying anything dangerous, and only then allowed her inside. The living room, where our meeting was to be held, was equipped with cameras and microphones. 2 officers stayed in the room, ready to step in at the first sign of trouble. Elena looked tired and tense. She sat across from me, hands folded in her lap. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she began. "I know you don't trust me, and you have every reason not to. But I hope that after I explain, you'll understand my motives." "I'm listening," I said, keeping my distance and emotional guard up. "You already know that I have ties to the criminal world through my cousin. And yes, I received money from your business, but not as part of some conspiracy against you. I was the middlewoman between Fernando and my cousin. Fernando needed money. My cousin could provide it. I made the introduction and received a commission. It was purely a business arrangement. And you saw nothing wrong with a husband secretly borrowing huge sums from criminals behind his wife's back?" I asked, sarcasm dripping from my voice. "I didn't know he was doing it behind your back," she replied. "He told me it was for expanding the business, that you were aware but preferred not to get involved in the financial side. And I believed him. Fernando always seemed like a successful businessman and a devoted husband." I raised an eyebrow but didn't interrupt. The problem started when Fernando couldn't make the payments. My cousin is not a patient creditor. He started pressuring, threatening, and Fernando came to me for help. He told me he planned to insure your life for a large sum and then get rid of you. He asked me to be his alibi on the day you died. And you agreed?" My voice was filled with revulsion. "No, of course not," Elena exclaimed. I was horrified. Being a financial intermediary is one thing, being part of a murder plot is something else entirely. I refused outright. But I knew saying no wouldn't stop him. He was desperate. That's when I decided to warn you, to stop him. Why? Why help me and not him? After all, you worked with him, not with me. Elena looked down. Because I know what it feels like to be betrayed by someone you trust. My ex-husband tried to get rid of me too, not to kill me, but to ruin me. If not for a stroke of luck, I wouldn't be sitting here now. I studied her closely, trying to discern whether she was telling the truth or just another manipulation. But that's not all, Elena continued. After Fernando's plan failed and he ended up in the hospital, things changed. My cousin and his men decided you were now their only chance to recover the money. They began threatening you. I tried to convince them to leave you alone, but they wouldn't listen. That's when I chose to help you build a case against Fernando, so you could protect yourself. And you just happened to discover his mistress in Krasnoyarsk? Was that part of your plan too? Yes. I knew about Gabriella. Fernando didn't hide her from me. But I thought you had the right to know the whole truth, painful as it might be. And what about Phoenix Consulting? Why did Fernando transfer so much money to your company? It was part of a money laundering operation. Fernando moved money out of your business through my company. Part went to pay his debts to my cousin, part to fund his personal life, including Gabriella, and the rest was laundered back into Russia through shell companies as clean funds. And you were involved in that scheme? Yes, Elena admitted without hesitation. I'm not proud of it, but yes, I participated. For a commission, of course. I leaned back, trying to absorb everything she'd said. Her story sounded plausible, but one question still loomed. Why are you telling me all this now? What changed? Elena leaned in, lowering her voice, though she knew every word was being recorded. Because you're in real danger. My cousin doesn't forgive debts, and now he considers you responsible for Fernando's. Yesterday, he found out his lawyer was arrested. He's furious and ready to act. He has informants in the police. He might already know where you are. What are you suggesting? I asked, the fear rising again. I can help you disappear. Not just hide in a safe house, really disappear. New name, new documents, a new life in another city, or even another country. I have contacts. I can make it happen. I stared at her, suspicious. You want me to become a fugitive? Leave behind my life, my friends, my work, everything? It's temporary, she assured me. Only until the police arrest my cousin and his people. Then you can come back if you want. But right now, your life is in danger. I glanced at the officers standing silently by the wall. Their faces were neutral, professionally blank, but something in their eyes told me they didn't consider the threat exaggerated. I can't make that kind of decision right now, I said, turning back to Elena. I need to think and speak to the detective. Of course, she nodded. But don't wait too long. You may have less time than you think. With that, our meeting ended. Elena left her contact number and departed with the officers. I was left alone in the living room, my head spinning with questions and doubts. Detective David Sanchez arrived an hour later. He looked serious and concerned. We checked the information Ms. Navarro gave us, he said, sitting across from me. Most of it checks out. Her cousin really is a leader of a local crime group, and he did lend money to your husband. Do you believe the threat is real? That this man could reach me even here? The detective hesitated before answering. We don't have solid proof he has informants in law enforcement, but we can't rule it out. In any case, we'll increase your protection. And we're considering moving you to an even more secure location. What about Elena's offer to help me disappear? It's a risky path, the detective said, shaking his head. We can't guarantee your safety if you leave police protection, and we can't fully trust Ms. Navarro, no matter how sincere she may appear. But you can't guarantee my safety here either, can you? I asked bluntly. The detective sighed. There are no absolute guarantees, Senora Morales, but we have the resources, the experience, and the determination to protect you. And how long is this going to last? A week, a month, a year? I can't live in hiding forever under police watch. I have a life, work, plans. I understand your frustration, but we're doing everything possible to resolve the investigation quickly. Your husband will be discharged from the hospital tomorrow, and we'll formally charge him. His testimony could be the key to arresting his creditors. I gave a skeptical huff. You really think Fernando is going to cooperate after everything he's done? He may not have a choice. The evidence against him is overwhelming. He's facing serious time for attempted murder. But if he agrees to cooperate and provides information about the criminal operation, the court might consider it a mitigating factor. I thought about it. Maybe that was a way out. If Fernando agreed to testify against the criminal group, it could lead to arrests and end the threat to my life. And when will we know whether he'll cooperate? I asked. Tomorrow. As soon as he's brought to the station, we'll conduct the first interview with his lawyer present. I nodded, feeling an odd sense of calm. I had a plan now, or at least the outline of one. Wait for the outcome of Fernando's interrogation, then decide whether to remain under police protection or accept Elena's offer and disappear. The night passed restlessly. I kept waking at every creak of the floor, every rustle. In the morning, I checked my phone and found a message from Elena, "Be ready. I'll be waiting for your answer at noon." I didn't respond, deciding to wait for news from the detective about Fernando's interrogation. Time dragged painfully slow. I tried to distract myself with reading, television, even reviewing financial documents, but my mind kept circling back to the looming decision. Finally, around 11 a.m., the detective called. "I have news, Senora Morales," he said, his voice tense. "Your husband was brought to the station this morning. He's been formally charged with attempted murder, but he refuses to testify against his creditors. He says he'd rather go to prison than risk retaliation from them." It was an unexpected turn. I had thought Fernando, who always looked out for himself first, would choose to cooperate to reduce his sentence, but clearly, fear of the criminal elements outweighed fear of prison. "What does that mean for me?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "It means we still don't have enough evidence to arrest the criminal group. We're continuing to work the case and gather information from other sources, but it's going to take time. In the meantime, you'll have to remain under our protection." I sighed. Time, it was the one thing I didn't have. Fernando's creditors wanted their money, and they weren't going to wait patiently for the justice system. "I understand," I said. Thank you for the update. After the call, I sat for a long time, staring out at the forest surrounding the safe house. The decision I had to make could change my entire life: stay under police protection, hoping they could keep me safe long enough to take down the criminal group, or accept Elena's offer and disappear, start a new life. Temporary, perhaps, but with more freedom and maybe more safety. At noon, I dialed Elena's number. "I've made my decision," I said when she answered. "I'll go through with your plan. Help me disappear." "Are you sure?" Elena's voice was serious. "This is not an easy choice. It comes with consequences." "I'm sure." Fernando refused to cooperate with the police. "That means the investigation will drag on, and I can't live in hiding indefinitely." "I understand. Here's what we need to do. Tonight around 8 p.m., there'll be a shift change in the security detail at the safe house. At that time, a gray Toyota will pull up to the back of the house. The driver is someone I trust. He'll help you leave discreetly and take you to a secure location where I'll meet you. The police monitor all my communications. They might be listening to this. I know. But by the time they react, you'll be long gone. And I've been careful not to give away the entire plan during this call." I hesitated, knowing I was about to break every safety protocol the police had put in place, but I saw no other option. "Okay. I'll be ready at 8. After the call, I began cautiously preparing to leave. I packed only the essentials into a small bag I could easily carry, destroyed my notes and any documents I'd been reviewing, and tried to behave as normally as possible so as not to raise suspicion with the guards. That evening, as the clock approached 8, I sat in the living room pretending to watch TV, but I was really listening for sounds outside. At 7:55, I heard a car pulling up at the back of the house. At exactly 8 o'clock, I heard the voices of the guards during the shift change. This was my moment. I quietly slipped into the bedroom, grabbed my bag, and climbed out the window that faced the back of the house. It was already dark, which worked in my favor. I darted across the yard toward the waiting gray Toyota. The engine was running. The driver, a middle-aged man with an unremarkable appearance, nodded as I got in. Without a word, he pulled away, driving calmly but purposefully away from the safe house. "Where are we going?" I asked once we reached the main road. "To the airport," he replied curtly. "Ms. Navarro is waiting for us there." I sat silently, watching the trees, houses, and cars blur past. A strange sense of unreality settled over me. Just a week ago, I had a normal life, a husband, a home, a business, plans for the future. Now I was running into the unknown, fleeing danger, fleeing my past and everything I once knew. An hour later, we arrived at the airport. The driver didn't take me through the main entrance but instead through a service entrance, flashing some kind of ID at a security guard. Inside, in a small VIP terminal waiting room, Elena greeted me. "You made it just in time," she said with relief. "The police have already started searching for you, but it hasn't occurred to them to look here. I have your new identity ready. From now on, you'll be Natalia Fuentes, business consultant." She handed me a passport, driver's license, and a credit card, all in the name of Natalia Fuentes. The documents looked real, professionally made. "How did you manage to set this all up so quickly?" I asked, examining the passport with my photo and a different name. "I have connections," Elena said with a mysterious smile. "And I'd planned for this in advance, in case things became too dangerous." I didn't know whether to thank her or suspect her of having her own hidden agenda, but I had no choice. I was trusting her entirely, putting my fate in her hands. We were guided through expedited check-in and passport control, and soon we were seated in business class on the plane. I looked out the window at the lights of the city I was leaving, perhaps forever, feeling a strange mix of fear, relief, and sadness. "What happens next?" I asked Elena as the plane began taxiing. "Next begins your new life, Barbara," she said, looking me in the eyes. "And I promise I'll do everything I can to keep you safe in it." The plane lifted off, carrying me away from the past, from danger, from betrayal, toward a future that was uncertain, but one where at least I was alive. Yet as we climbed into the sky, I couldn't shake the feeling that something still didn't add up, that something important was slipping through my fingers. And that something might be the key to understanding the full story behind my fall and my rebirth. The flight passed mostly in silence. Elena was immersed in her laptop, occasionally whispering into her phone. I was trying to get used to my new name and new identity, Natalia Fuentes, business consultant. Single, independent, self-assured, the exact opposite of the confused, betrayed Barbara I had been just a week ago. When we landed, we spent only a few hours in the airport waiting for our connecting flight to Paris. Elena kept working on her phone while I sat at a cafe, watching the travelers rush by and thinking about how fast life can change, how a secure, confident woman can turn into a fugitive, living under a false name. In Paris, we were met by another member of Elena's network, a young man with a typical European look. He took us to a small hotel in the city center where rooms had been booked for us. "You can rest here and get used to your new identity," Elena said after we settled in my room. "Tomorrow we'll meet someone who'll help us with the next steps." "What steps?" I asked, feeling the exhaustion from the flight and days of tension. "I have contacts in a coastal town where they can offer you a job and a place to live. It's quiet, touristy, you'll be safe there and can start over." I nodded, though unease was growing inside me. Everything was happening too fast, too smoothly, as if Elena had planned every detail of my disappearance long in advance. But why? What was her true motivation? "Elena," I began cautiously, "why are you doing all this for me? It's more than guilt or empathy." She gave me a long look, as if deciding how much truth I was ready to hear. "You're right," she said finally. "There are other reasons, personal ones. My brother, he's not just a criminal figurehead. He's dangerous. He's destroyed many lives, including mine. When I saw what he was planning to do to you, I couldn't stay silent." "What did he do to you?" I asked, sensing this was a piece of the puzzle I needed. Elena sighed. "It's a long and ugly story. Let's just say he used me for years, for money laundering, for connections with legitimate businesses. When I tried to break free, he threatened me and those I cared about. I was his prisoner for years, until I learned how to play his game while preserving some measure of independence. And now you're using me to get back at him?" I couldn't hide the bitterness in my voice. "No. Not revenge," she said, shaking her head. "Justice. Your husband and my brother were working together. They deceived you, planned your murder. I couldn't allow that. By helping you disappear, I'm not just saving you, I'm denying both of them what they wanted. Fernando won't get the insurance money. My brother won't get repaid. That's not revenge, that's justice." Her words sounded sincere, but something still didn't sit right with me. Some piece of the puzzle was still missing. What if I don't want to disappear? I asked suddenly. What if I want to fight? What if I want to go back and seek justice not just for myself, but for everyone your brother and people like Fernando have hurt? Elena looked at me, surprised. "That's a very risky path, Barbara. My brother has connections in the police and the judicial system. Even with the evidence you have, getting him arrested and convicted will be extremely difficult." "But not impossible," I countered. "Especially if I have help from the inside, someone who knows all the schemes, all the connections." "You mean me?" Elena looked alarmed. "You want me to go against my own brother? Aren't you already doing that by helping me?" I asked. "Isn't that what you want with justice?" Elena was silent for a long time, weighing my words. "It's dangerous," she said finally. "For you, for me, for everyone involved." "Life is dangerous," I shrugged. "But I'd rather fight than run, especially now, when I have almost nothing left to lose." "Almost?" She raised an eyebrow. "I still have my dignity, my determination, and my future," I replied. "And I want that future to be built on truth and justice, not fear and escape." Elena looked at me with a new expression, a mix of respect and concern. "You're a strong woman, Barbara. Stronger than I thought." And maybe you're right. Maybe it's time to stop saving victims one by one and start going after the people who create them. Then are you with me? I held out my hand. She hesitated for a moment, then grasped it firmly. Yes, I'm with you. But we'll need a plan, a careful, secure plan. We spent the whole night working out the details. Elena told me everything she knew about her brother's business, his contacts, his weak spots. I shared what I knew about Fernando's financial schemes and the evidence the police already had. By morning, we had a plan, risky, complex, requiring perfect coordination and flawless execution. But it was a plan that could bring not only justice for me, but also the downfall of a criminal empire that had destroyed many lives. The first step, Elena said as we finished our strategy, is to contact Detective David Sanchez and share our plan. Without police support, we don't stand a chance. Do you think he'll agree? I asked, remembering the detective's skepticism about Elena's methods. If we present solid evidence and a clear plan, he won't have a choice. This is his chance to crack a major case and advance his career. I nodded, feeling adrenaline and determination pushing aside fear and uncertainty. Then let's begin. We have a lot of work to do. The following days were filled with intense effort. We contacted Detective David Sanchez, who, after his initial shock and a fair share of scolding for my escape from police protection, agreed to hear our plan. Through a secure communication channel, we sent him all the evidence we had gathered, the full details of the criminal scheme, all the names and connections. The detective was impressed by the depth and quality of the information. This could be a breakthrough, he said after reviewing the material. But the operation is extremely risky. You'll be putting yourself in serious danger. I don't have a choice, I replied. It's the only way to reclaim my life and ensure justice. After lengthy discussions and adjustments, the detective agreed to support the plan. The key element was using Elena as a double agent. She would return home and convince her brother that I was hiding in Europe but was willing to return and repay Fernando's debt in exchange for a guarantee of safety. That would buy the police time to prepare a full-scale operation to arrest the entire criminal network. I remained in Paris under the protection of Interpol agents working with Detective Sanchez. Elena went back, stepping into a dangerous game with her own brother.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe to the channel.